Hello everyone, welcome back to Complete and Total Random. Today I'm going to be going over how to play ground simulator battles in War Thunder. I will eventually do another video on how to play air simulator. It is quite a bit different. There's a lot of things you need to do. And I'm going to be joined here today by Zach, who's going to help me demonstrate some of the stuff while we're in a match.
Hello, hello.
So, first off, the first thing you'll want to check when you go to do simulator, it's just, so these are the two sets of simulator. You got Allies versus Axis and NATO versus Soviets. So these are your two kind of sets, and then each, like every time you, like every day they swap through them. So there'll be a different lineup every day. They range from 1.0 tanks all the way up to 11.7 and everything in between. Each of them basically has a mismatch of specific vehicles you can pick from for either side. And then you basically just put those in your lineup, and then you take part and you'll load into a sim match and be able to fight. As you can see right now, it's basically like Jumbos versus Tigers, kind of around the 5-7 range. And then one thing I would always recommend doing before you get into a match, and we'll get into why later, is checking over what different vehicles are on each side, making sure you can kind of, and just going through and just like kind of looking at any of the vehicles you've never seen before. It's quite intimidating for new players because they don't know any of these vehicles. But what you can always do is just, before you go into a match, just go over, mouse over them, and you can kind of just see what different vehicles look like. And just kind of take a general note. As you play, you'll slowly learn more about how each of these vehicles look and play. And to start with, you're going to accidentally get some team kills. You're going to have some hard times kind of learning it. But the best way to do it is just to play. And I wouldn't worry too much about making mistakes. Most sim players are pretty forgiving for accidental team kills. It happens a lot. It's kind of part of sim.
It's part of the experience.
Yes.
Team kills are just, it's part of it. Sometimes people are scared. They're in a tough spot, and then a tank shows up in their sight, and they just shoot before they identify.
Yeah.
It's just part of the experience.
Yeah, and even people with thousands of hours can accidentally team kill. Now,
I.e. me.
there's some other things you'll also want to take note of before you go into a sim match. In your scope, I'll put a bush on this tank just so I can demonstrate when I start the match. You can see all of your decorations through your scope, like your gunner's optic, which you can be found just through X-ray, and you'll be able to find your gunner's optics. This is where you view out of the tank. In sim, you don't view through your cannon barrel, you view through your gunner optics, and you can see all of your decorations and stuff. So if you put bushes all over your tank or other decorations that block that gunner sight, it'll give you some trouble. That's one thing to keep a note of.
It's got me more than a few times.
Yeah, basically every time we play sim together.
Every time we play, I accidentally have a bush in front of my sight.
And then the other thing is, sometimes in sim, different lineups will have things like captured or even just normal Lend-Lease vehicles in their lineups that match with the other teams. As you can see, the KV-2 in this lineup is both in the Russian tech tree, so it's in the Russian lineup, and it's in the German lineup. Now, if you're playing these types of tanks, you will get team killed. It's kind of inevitable. One way to mitigate that is there's many decals and stuff that you can find, like the Iron Cross that you can use just to try and designate your tank, as I have done here. Hopefully it'll stop you from getting team killed. Sometimes it's inevitable, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. You don't actually lose any Silver Lions if you die by getting team killed, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. You do lose a little bit of Silver Lions if you team kill, but it's not enough to worry about unless you're doing it constantly.
Yeah,
And that's the main reason it's there.
It's not a concern, really.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just playing the game and generally, being a good sport, it's not a concern.
Yes. Now, let me just put another bush on here just so I can kind of demonstrate these gun sights a little better. And yeah, so you go into simulator, you'll make sure your lineup matches up. If you're not sure which of the vehicles you have, the ones that are in white are vehicles that you have researched and unlocked. The ones that are in gold are old event vehicles that you don't have. And the ones that are in red are vehicles you haven't researched in the tech tree yet. Now, me and Zach are going to start waiting for a match here. Once we get into one, we'll hop back into this and show you everything else you'll need to know to start playing Sim. Yep. Okay, guys, so now that we're in a match here, if I hop into my gunner sight, I can see my bushes and decals through my gunner sight, because you can see how it's in the way of my gunner sight. And if I go, you can kind of see that. In Sim, you are locked into this kind of Capolo view, your commander's view, as well as your gunner sight. Now, some other important things to note, especially when it's early on and you're trying to distinguish what tanks are what, you can always look at a tank, and if you range find it, requesting location of allies, it'll tell you if there's allies in that area. And if it does, it usually means that they're an ally. And then another way to tell if they're an ally, now I would not recommend doing this because it just makes things worse, but if you aren't sure and you end up shooting them, or you shoot them by accident or whatever, one way to tell if you made the mistake of shooting them is you'll see in the top right corner, when I shoot, it does give me an indication of what I have damaged, but it doesn't show what the hell that just happened. Well, as you can see though, it didn't show a damage, like the damage view, and that's to kind of try and indicate to you that you're hitting a teammate. Yeah.
You wanna try again?
Nah, we'll keep that in the video. That was hilarious.
Alright.
And then one of the other kind of final things to note as you're playing Sim, this catches a lot of people off guard, is if you look through my scope here, you'll see on the right hand side you can see my gun. So if I drive up to this building, War Thunder Simulator has this thing called gun parallax, which basically means that there's a difference in the distance between your...
He's back! I'm sorry.
You missed.
Yep. He missed.
There's a difference in distance between where your sight is and where your gun is, which means when you fire, your gun isn't going to be hitting where your sight is aiming. It's going to be hitting basically the distance away from your gun that your sight is. So meaning you will always be off by that much. So you always got to take that into account when firing. So especially if you're trying to fire, let's say you're trying to fire around a corner or something, you got to keep that into account, otherwise you'll end up hitting the corner like I just did. So usually you'll want to end up like moving your sight a little bit farther away so you can fire past the building or other obstacles in your way, especially when you're trying to fire through tight, cramped areas. And other than that, Zach, do you got any other additions you think would be helpful for new Sim players?
All I can really give is really look into the weird vehicles that certain tech trees get. Like the tank you saw me in earlier before you got bombed, the Zerini 1. It's a commonly team killed vehicle because it's so strange. Like it is this weird stug shaped thing, but then it's got rocket pods on the back. Also, look into what certain nations have.
Yeah, so basically,
Italy, for instance,
the easiest way to do that is like as I showed, you can see there's the two lines of vehicles, and then honestly you can just mouse over them real quick, take a quick mental note. You're not going to remember them all right off the top of your head. Usually you just need to remember the general ones, the ones that more people play, like what your IS tanks look like, what your Tiger 1s, your Shermans look like, and usually that'll have you covered. If you end up doing a couple team kills, it happens. I wouldn't worry too much about it, as long as you're not going out of your way to intentionally do it. You will get penalized. You'll get like you'll get a slight loss of credits, and then if you do 2 team kills in a match, it'll kick you out of that match temporarily. But it's not gonna like get you banned. So that's not something I would worry about. And yeah, honestly, I would recommend giving Sim a try. A lot of people are intimidated by it. And just have it fun out there, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video informative.